What's up, man?
Not much. You got the green
Sorry
screen. You
about
ready to
missing out
you ready to
yesterday, dude.
stream. You ready to pop on
Oh yeah,
stream.
man. Yeah, dude.
How's that
I
been going
streamed for
for
a
you?
while. I haven't streamed in a while actually.
Oh, really?
I've just been like, yeah, I haven't actually honestly haven't streamed like over well, I did like a few streams over the past year, but like nothing like serious or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just got involved like a bunch of NDA stuff and like that I couldn't really stream anymore, so I
Gotcha.
couldn't be on stream.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had a bunch of work
but
to
I'm gonna
do,
get
but
back to it after this.
yeah, had a bunch of work to do, but nobody could see it.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like taking up all my time, so I just couldn't devote it to the stream.
Yeah.
I should have
Yeah.
done it more though.
I looked at your stream the other day when I was just looking at your work, just stuff like that,
Yeah,
just doing like
yeah, yeah.
pre-interview research stuff. And I thought maybe you did the like the no VODs, like where people couldn't watch your VODs.
Yeah, yeah.
Because a lot of
I don't
people
remember if I
who
had done
do
that.
art do that
Yeah,
because
do the
it's
no
like,
VODs thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I might do that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like I said, I'm gonna get back to streaming once like this whole campaign thing's over,
Hmm.
because there's like no time to do anything else while you're like running a Kickstarter. But run a Kickstarter, so
Right, right.
it's been
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of questions about that, so we'll definitely be talking about that because I've interviewed, well, pretty much everybody that I've interviewed has been involved in your, like, in the Kickstarters that you're a part of. So it's like
right, right,
I'm getting the full circle on
right, right,
what everybody's
right.
experience has been like between like
Yes.
Last Stop and then now Yumi, and then I talked to Doug for like the Thomas River stuff and
Right, right.
uh,
Dope, dope, dope. Yeah, because you talked to Trey about the last stop stuff,
yep,
right? Too. Yeah,
yep,
awesome, awesome. That's what's
yeah,
up. Well, I'm glad. I'm happy you talked. Those are good people. So
yeah. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a good time. So I have just basic intro just to introduce you, and then I've got 6 questions, and then I always do like these goofy rapid fire questions.
sure.
Um, and those are just kind of like a fun way to just end the thing, so it's not so
Yeah.
serious.
Oh yeah, it's all good. Are my volume, my levels all right?
Yeah,
Mike,
you're good.
everything?
I
Okay.
got you.
Okay. Cool.
I'm running OBS, so I got you like tweaked up a little bit, and
Okay.
then
Cool.
I don't. I just do. I turned all my music off and stuff.
Let me make sure my phone's off too. I don't want that to go off.
Oh, that is a good call. And I gotta lock the door or unlock the door because my fiance is gonna come home on lunch. That was like the first thing that happened when I interviewed Doug. You just hear this like giant bang in the background. It's because
Yeah.
I unlocked the door, but I didn't take the bar off, and so she opened the door and it
Mm,
just
mm.
boom, and that bar. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Good. Take your time, man.
Wow. All right, cool.
1 second, real quick, just as we're talking here, I got to text an editor. Uh, All right. Dude, it's like awesome to have a bunch of projects going on and a bunch of stuff happening or whatever, but it's also like a lot more work every time stuff like that's
Oh
happening too.
yeah.
It's like you gotta keep sometimes you forget about stuff and you're like, oh man, I really hope I didn't. Can I cuss on here?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I really hope I didn't fuck that up. That's like what I'm constantly thinking all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
All the stuff. And I'm
No,
like,
for sure.
oh.
I that was like last time we were supposed to meet. I had to reschedule stuff because I had a ton of pages to do and no time to. I
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good though, man.
yeah.
That's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem for sure.
Yeah, yeah, dope.
Let's see here. Okay, so we should be good. So yeah, I'm just gonna do the intro thing and then we'll start jamming out. And then if there's anything that like if I ask a question and it goes off on a tangent, don't feel like you have to like reel it in or whatever. Like I got time, so we just chat, and then
Okay.
whenever you need to leave, like you're the more busy of the two of us. So the moment that
Oh
you
no,
need
you're
to,
good. You're good. We'll talk until we're done, man. So you just tell me when we're done. We're done. So I don't have anything else like planned other than getting food in a little
important.
while. So
There is a question about that in here, so
all right, all right.
I'll make it the last 2 questions so you don't get too hungry.
You're good.
All right, here we go. So Thank you everybody for watching the Creator-Owned podcast. Today I'm here with Hoyt Silva, artist on The Last Stop, the Mongrel webcomic, and more recently, Yumi. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem, no problem. We've been trying to link up for a little bit, and you've been super busy, as you were kind of telling me before we started. What's been going on? How's the Kickstarter going?
The Kickstarter is going awesome. We honestly this morning just crossed like our stretch goal for 15K, which is incredible. Like we're funded. We've got a stretch goal under our belts now, and we still got a week left on the campaign. So like that's popping. Like I can't, no complaints, nothing like that. Like I'm super ecstatic. It's definitely like the most successful Kickstarter I've run out of the 3 that I've done so far. Like I can't be anything but happy about it. I'm happy that like this is actually going to become a thing. That's like there's like a difference in like my brain when that line gets crossed of like, hey, this is, I want this to happen. This would be really great, to then, okay, now we have enough funding, so it's going to happen. What are we going to do with it now? Kind of thing. And
Right.
It's definitely a good problem to have. And then I've got like several other projects that I'm working on too. Trey and I, we're in talks to hopefully set something up for Mongrel, and also, we've got Last Stop over at Scout now too. So it's just there's a lot going on, but it's all like good stuff. So
Right.
no complaints.
Lots of moving pieces.
Yeah.
It's cool when that the line between concept and product is like moved over.
Yeah. It's a different thing, like it just makes it from like dream to reality, and it's like a weird shift when it's like, wow, okay, this is actually going to exist now. People are actually really going to see this in reality. Like, okay, cool. Like, here we go. Like it's just an adventure. Because I think for me, the most thrilling part about doing any kind of project is getting it out and people reading it and then seeing what people's reactions are to that. You know what I mean? Like whether I was successful or not in achieving my storytelling goals, like whether I got the message properly across, or whether like, anything, like whether my art was successful. And
Right. Yeah, it's the ultimate critique.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once it's out there, and once it's out there and everybody sees it for what it is, it's not a what are they, like a 1x1 square on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like you're not limited to the posting splash pages, and like you get to do some real storytelling, and that's
Right.
like the exciting part, is going from, I think like Doug and I joked, like the stack of I've got a stack of watercolor pages over here for my thesis, and it's like once that is then behind me on the bookshelf, then I'll be happy. Like I love what I've done, but it'll be way better when it's behind me.
Oh, dude, yeah. When you can put it in the library, like that's like, yeah, that is awesome. And after I got my first taste of that, like I think I just kept chasing it, and so like that I think is like the thing too that a lot of people don't realize is like a lot of the time spent is in the process of creating the thing, and then the thing exists, and then it's out there, and then people can buy it or support you by backing your Kickstarter or whatever route you choose to go. And but then by that point, you're already working on something else, and like sort of trying to build something else going and like get that going. So like being a comic book storyteller, whether you're a writer or artist, I think you have to fall in love with like that process, love that, like that you have that stack there, but then also love that it goes back on the shelf so you can make room for like more stuff to go on the stack for some other things. So
exactly. It's like raising a child. Like you spend so much time with the child in its early years, developing it, and then hoping that when it leaves for college and your book leaves to go to the publisher, it's a fully functioning adult and people like it.
True. No, that's actually an interesting way to put it, for sure. I think like, definitely that's an interesting way to put it.
I mean, they're not so different, because it's like you want them to be alive, and so
it's true.
It's true. You get attached very quickly. I'm even little things that my fiance will say about like a page that I'm on, and she's like, "That's a lot of trees. Are there supposed to be that many trees in that panel?" And it's just like, there's as many trees as on this panel as there are in the forest. Like it's not it's not cluttered. it's not clutter. The focal point is there somewhere. They'll understand, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You get very touchy over like just minimal things sometimes because it's like this is my baby.
Right, right. Well, I think that's the thing to be weary of too, you know, because like in at least for me, like because like I try not to get like I love all of my projects, don't get me wrong by saying this. Like I absolutely love every single one of my projects to death and they are my babies, you
Mm.
know, but I'm never afraid to like kill that baby to
Oh.
like get something better out of it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like one of those things where I'm not so attached to it where it is like a child of mine, where I like a project when I think of an idea or something and I'm working with somebody and we're coming up with something and going back and forth. I like to give it like infinite room to evolve and become something else and not be afraid to like drop an idea because it no longer works with like the ultimate goal of like what we're trying to achieve with the story.
Right.
If that makes sense. So that like that sense of attachment I have a lot in the beginning, but then I try to like not have that as much moving. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those like at first it's like, yeah, this is awesome, this is cool, this is mine, like whatever. But then quickly I have to like try to switch into my editor brain to be
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, but this works, this doesn't, this works, this doesn't,
Yeah,
and
for
try to
sure.
get over that stuff, you know. And again, not to say that it's like not important to care about your projects. I care about every single one of my projects. It's just when it comes to the idea and like the core of it, it can change as long as that is,
Yeah, as long as the essence is
you
still
know,
there.
yeah, as long as the essence is still there and it's actually like improving what we set out to do with the story,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah, number one goal, storytelling. You can do anything within the story that you want as long as it doesn't break, you know what I mean, the overall
yeah,
guideline. I think
right,
a lot of people start out with that intention and then as the project either gets too much for them or it's taking too long, you know what I mean? Like I've seen a lot of things get cut that maybe were a little too ambitious because
yeah, well,
they didn't set the right parameters.
right, and that's the parameters exactly. Like, for me, you know, it's like a constant struggle over my artist side to like my storyteller side. I think my brain works like in two halves like that, where my artist side just wants to draw and just wants to like put every single detail in there that I can fit if I can fit a detail in there, you know, and if I can cram it in there, if I can zoom in and I can see it, I want to put something there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I have that constant battle between that and then the storyteller brain that's just like, hey, that's not necessary right now. You know, like you don't need that in this panel. That's going to take away from like sort of this thing. Now you got people looking over here where there's like really not anything going on, you know, like, and
Right.
it's just a constant back and forth. I think with myself because that struggle, I'm sure a lot of people feel that too. And to tap on what you said there, like I think I feel the most struggle to try to get something done when I'm living on that artist side of things
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm thinking on like the ego side of like, man, I want people to like this.
Right.
I'm not thinking like this is important to the story, you know, like because I think when I can stay focused of like, okay, this is what's important here, move on to the next thing, this is what's important here, move on to the next thing, I think I can maintain a better control over like the story overall. If I start getting like, oh man, I want to get in there and draw this awesomely, you know, like
Right.
I'll get caught up in doing too much, I think.
Yeah, if you get caught up in the technical and the mechanical skill, you know, you mean like
Right, the how,
and
yeah.
it's kind of a trap for us because it's like this is what we enjoy. Like I love technical
True.
drawing, and so it's like
Yeah.
if I can get in there and I can start mapping out like the way that he's pulling this blade out of this, you know, out of this scabbard on his hip, and it needs to be, you know, it needs to be like dynamic, and I wanted a lot of emotion out of this pull, and it's like, but he's this big on the page.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's my
He's a background character.
yeah.
You know? He's like a guy
It
in
was
the crowd.
exactly.
Like,
It wasn't even my main character, but it was just like
yeah.
that guy spoke to me. As
Yeah.
I just posted a comment on Dark Mechanic. I don't know if you've ever seen him on Instagram, but he posted a lot of work on you know, a lot of whips. He posted a lot of whip time lapse stuff like that, and he had a like a .01 Copic, you know, and he's just like in there doing these tiny figures, and they've got like and they've got gesture to
Brutal.
them, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
how? Like, and then I've seen guys with the tiny jeweler's magnifying glass getting in there and like doing details
Nah,
and
see,
stuff.
I can't do that. I can't be that guy. That just
Yeah,
takes too long. Like,
I
so although I like that stuff and I like doing that like on a cover or for like a commission or like really going in on something like
mm-hmm,
that, when I'm on storyteller mode for inside the book and doing sequential stuff, I try to like run from that stuff as much
right,
as like it's literally my concern is like what is the minimum I can do here to get across like the point that I need to get across for the story, and then like let me move to the next beat and think about how those two work together to build something greater than either one does independently, and then
right,
keep just moving forward like that. Because like getting caught in that is a huge trap, dude. Like I can attest. I've been caught in that trap before, and you get like you waste all that time like drawing all these tiny little guys in the background, at least for me, and then all of a sudden like I zoom out to what it's going to look like in print and you don't even see they're like blips. I literally could
mm-hmm,
have just like tapped just stippled in like a couple of dots and it would have been the same kind of thing. And so
right,
after like years of doing that, I try to like avoid inside interior stuff. I try to like everything I can simplify, everything I can like just bare bones, like, hey, here's the story beat, here's the story moment. Let me, take you to the next one and so on and so forth.
right,
Um, and it's been interesting to play with both of those, like both in comics intended for print and then in comics intended for like the web as well.
right,
It's like kind of wild to play because they're two different, I think, playgrounds as well.
mm,
I think what necessarily appeals in one doesn't always necessarily appeal in the other. You know, like for example, I think when doing stuff for print, which is a medium somebody's going to like hold in their hands and spend a little bit more time with and sort of go over and pour over and stuff, I think like the quality of the art itself is like expected to be a little bit higher in like the reader and the viewer in that circle. Whereas if you're doing stuff for the web, because you people's attention is so limited online and they jump on and jump off so quickly, you got to have something that like grabs their attention and just quickly and gets what you want to get across so that you can communicate fast and they can understand. And I think that the more detail you have in something, the more time you're asking somebody to spend on it, to like digest it. And so like high intensity detail like web comics don't work as well for that. I think,
right,
like there's a lot of time versus like what you get out of it sort of deal. And I think that also comes into play if you're considering whether you're like an artist or a storyteller and how many stories you want to tell, because that's another hurdle for me, which is why I'm always concerned with like how can I be efficient in my storytelling, because I have like a ton of stories I want to tell,
mm-hmm,
so I don't want to spend like the next however many years working on just one thing. I'd like to spend it working on a bunch of stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. Trey and I talked about that last time. It just had like the volume of work that it takes to do one. Let's say, like I'm working on my thesis, which is 10 chapters, around 200 pages,
mhm.
and
It's impressive,
that
man.
that is stopping me from doing like I have this. It's in my sketch. It's just like this jokey little it's like a play on cockfighting. It's just it's like an MMA tournament of chickens,
Oh,
and
dope. Okay. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just like
yeah.
I want to do that more than I want to
Yeah.
do this like high fantasy book. But it's just like
Right.
this, you know,
But I'm
it,
here. Yeah. I'm here doing this.
is it really gonna be successful? Like, would people read that? And he was like, we should just do it as like a web comic. And I was like, I could probably do that. Just like a,
Yeah.
just a really simple, every 2 week we get to see like two chickens fighting in an MMA
Yeah.
arena.
Well, dude, I mean, like, I mean, the web is out there for you to be able to just put your stuff out there. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, like, you can find an audience that would be invested in seeing you develop an idea. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot into that as well. Like, just seeing somebody grow. Obviously, we're talking about something that takes time, so it wouldn't be like an instant reaction to, I mean, it could be, obviously we don't know nobody knows how the internet works.
Right.
So
It's an
it
enigma.
could go viral and go nuts and,
Mm-hmm.
whatever and take off. More than likely you'll post about it for a while before you start gaining some following and some look into that. But then once they do, those will be people that follow you throughout a lot of the stuff that you do, because they'll see that develop and grow. And so I would also second Trey's thought and say that you should think about anything that you're going to develop like independently by yourself, already think about like turning to the internet and like involving them in the process of your growth,
Right.
just as like a tip going forward, as like because you're doing your thesis, you're in school and stuff. When you
Yeah.
get out, you got a long time ahead of you. Start building that stuff now, and I think that will definitely help you a lot in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like this, you have to have the same mindset, I feel like, with commissions. Like I've posted a few times, work that I've done on the side for people that I know in real life, commissions wise, but then the attraction is always like, well, I'll just post something on Instagram and I'll probably, at least get like one person. And then when you
Right.
don't, you have to make sure that you understand it's like, well, you only post about it once. Like
Right.
you
You
know
have
what
to
I
temper
mean? Like,
expectations.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You have to temper expectations.
I think that's like a misleading thing with social media just in general is
Right.
the we see the pops,
Yeah, everybody wants to pop. Yeah,
yeah.
everybody wants to pop, and that's, yeah. But yeah, you got to realize that like 99.9999% of all
Mm-hmm.
99.9999% of all posts don't pop. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
just
for sure.
you just gotta write it out. I think and I think that's another mindset too for people getting in the game, for doing art and comics and stuff like that for a living. I would recommend you run your presence online, however you decide to do that.
Mm.
Run it like a small business. Don't try to think about running it like a giant multi conglomerate, huge industrial run, unless all of a sudden you have like the clientele for that randomly, just for whatever reason, or whatever your talent, your skill, or you just go viral for whatever reason. Um, I would recommend like running it like a small business and really taking care of the people that support you.
Mm-hmm.
Really just handling it like that, because I think the internet has gotten so big at this point that it's like kind of the inverse of what it used to be, right? Like when the internet was first coming around, everybody was like, "Oh man, I can hop on the internet and I can compete with like Nike, I can
Mm-hmm.
compete with like whoever." And that was true because you could get in and like create that large enough of a space. Now there's so many people creating in so many different spaces online that I think the goal now is not necessarily to just, yes, reach as many people as possible, of course, but to make sure that you take care of the people that support you,
Right.
like just treat it like as if you were just a smaller community. And I think you'll see growth then as well. That's a good bit of advice I think I can give to people coming up.
Yeah. No, it's good. So I guess take me back to like where you kind of started. Like, have you always been into comics? Did you collect comics? Like, what kind of got you into that? Like, what your education kind of look like as far as like art goes?
So my origin story, let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
The prologue.
when I was a
Give
kid,
me the
yeah,
Hoyt
the
Silva
prologue.
prologue.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I loved comics. It was a form of escapism for me. My parents bought a lot, so
Mm.
I like read a lot of comics just to get away from that. Listened to a lot of music, watched a lot of movies, played outside a lot, like just to get away from sort of what was going on at the house. And that ingrained in me, I think, a love for storytelling that I didn't realize at that point. And I grew up, I always liked comic books. I think I doodled in like the margins of like notebooks and like stuff like that in school, but never really took like art seriously at all, until I was in college and I was going to school for business. Then I decided, well, I kind of sort of like artsy stuff, so let me try out graphic design. So I switched my major over to graphic design. And then I made a move out to San Diego from where I was at the time, living in Tallahassee, Florida, going to college there, because there wasn't many opportunities for a graphic designer in Tallahassee. So I decided to go to San Diego to finish my degree. When I was out there, I was living with my pops and like living out of his garage. And I was kind of just, I didn't know anybody, I was already out there for like 3 months. So at that point, I was thinking like, oh, I kind of like drawing. I would like to do a comic book one day. I'm not really sure if I'll ever really do one. Um, and since I was out there for 3 months just by myself, I was like, well, I got nothing to do. I just ended up drawing a lot. I ended
Mm.
up like just sitting at a desk and drawing and looking. And then I started getting fascinated with the idea that maybe I should do a comic in that time where I was just sitting there doing nothing. And so I looked up stuff online. I found every resource forum I could find that was
Mm-hmm.
talking about like comics professionals and how to set up a portfolio and how to get work and all this stuff, and looking to see if it was actually feasible. Um, and then I realized that there was a convention coming through. I couldn't make it to San Diego Comic Con because it was obviously like mad sold out.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, all right, I can't do that. And I'm living in San Diego at the time, you know, and I was like, all right, I can't do the convention here in town. So I was like, what's the next best thing? And then I found that there was a convention happening in San Francisco, which was WonderCon the last year that it was in San Francisco. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'll get a portfolio together for that convention, since everybody online is saying, hey, go to a convention and show your portfolio convention, try to get work that way. I was like, all right, I'll go to that one. I'll put together a portfolio. And so, based on the data I had compiled online, and at that time I was thinking like, I'm going to do mainstream comics. So I wanted to be able to hit that like time frame that everybody was talking about online, which was like basically a page a day.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 2 weeks leading up to WonderCon, what I did was I did two separate samples of like 7 pages a piece, spending only like a day on each page. And then I was going to take that portfolio to WonderCon, because I was like, well, this is my actual like true level. If I was going to get the job today, you know, this is what I could do.
Right.
And so I got that together. There were some other pinups and just random drawings that I had put together that month or whatever that I threw in there as well. Went to WonderCon, got my very first portfolio review from Eric Larson, who
Okay.
created Savage Dragon and Image
Absolutely.
Comics and stuff, right? Yeah, so he was just like, and it was one of those things like I just kind of like walked in the convention center. I didn't really know what I was doing. Kind of wandered around and I saw him give a portfolio review to somebody else. So I was like, well, fuck it, here I go. You know,
Right.
like let's see what happens. And so I just kind of stood there behind somebody else getting their review. Eric like tore them a new asshole,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, okay, well, here we go. And you know, we he just started going by over my stuff like panel by panel, like basically just like he asked me like what I was into, what I liked and what I was doing this for, and if I knew what I was getting into, and I just threw up everything that I had read online on him.
Right. Right.
And he was like, okay, cool. Well, if you know what's going on, then let me tell you here. And, I made sure to let him know, like, hey, these are like a page a day kind of thing. Like, I made sure to do these at like that to,
Yeah.
this is where
At the
I'm at
day
that
day
level.
rate.
Yeah, the
Right.
day rate, exactly. And he went through my stuff like panel by panel, man, and he just like kicked my ass on
Oh
like
yeah.
everything that I was off and on. He was just like, okay, this doesn't work here. This isn't working. There was like a cityscape I drew. He's like, what is this, a stack of books? Like, you gotta like
Oh.
fix this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he just
Yeah.
started like going in on it, and I was just like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
damn, I messed up a lot. And I was like, he really hates my stuff. Like that's crazy. But like, whatever. First review on this stuff. And I'm like, it's whatever. Like I
For
suck. I
sure.
know that. Like I'm trying to get better. It's cool. It's cool. So he gets to the end and he like literally looks at me and he's just like, so at this point, you probably think I hate your shit, And I was just like, and I'm quoting there, and I was just like, no, it's totally fine, Mr. Larson. Like, it's okay. I know I suck. Like today, he was like, no, man, it's cool. He's like, you're not half bad, He was like, you're not half bad. You just have to like work on some stuff and
Right.
you'll get better and you'll be fine. And so like he was like really lighthearted after that point, and it like struck me, that he was like really legitimately trying to help me at that point, and I was like, wow, blown away by that. Sort of walked around the convention hall for a while, met this guy named Josh Covey, and we sort of became convention buddies at that point because we were just going around getting different reviews and sort of telling each other, hey, you need to go talk to this person, or hey, you should get a review from this person or whatever. And I put him on to Eric Larson, which he ended up getting some like Image Comics work like way down the line after that, which
That's
was really
sick.
cool.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like I'm really
Yeah.
happy for him. Josh is an awesome artist. So and then he actually put me on to Brian Stelfreeze. He was like, hey, you should go talk to Stelfreeze. I think he'll really help you out with your stuff, And I was like, yeah, sure. And I already knew that Brian did review stuff, but I didn't want to take it to Brian. And that's only because, like, as a kid, right, like Brian was like a huge idol for me
For sure.
in comics and in art and stuff like that. Because as a kid, before I realized, when I was like, 10, 8, 9, 10 years old, before I realized anything about comics, I thought that the person doing the covers of the comic book
It,
was the person who like made up the character, you know? Like I
okay,
just
yeah, I
had
could
no
see
idea.
that.
So I just assumed like, yo, this is the guy, you know?
Yep.
So for me at that time, those like Shadow of the Bat covers from Brian were coming out. So I assumed that Stelfreeze had like invented Batman when I
Oh,
first saw. You know, I was just
yeah.
like, dude, this is ill. Like I was like, this guy's crazy dope. And like I had no idea, you know, I had no idea
Right.
about Bob Kane or anything like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until years
Bill
later that I
Finger.
discovered.
Can't forget Bill
Yeah, Bill
Finger.
Finger. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that documentary.
And so yeah, it's good. It's good. Um so like you know, just as a dumb kid, I thought that. So I guess like in my heart of hearts, he sort of had this like
Mm.
token of iconography that other people didn't have
Right, right.
for whatever reason. And but then I ended up getting up the courage and I went and I talked to Brian, you know, and he was super busy and they told me, you know, hey, okay, he'll do reviews like, you know, later on today, just come on back. And so, you know, I came back, I was like third in line. The first is this was this young woman who she opened up her portfolio and she just had these like gorgeous paintings in there, you know, and I was just like, oh my god, like what the fuck, you know? I was like, what is this? I was like,
you
are we
keep
really?
following up the wrong people.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck is this, man? And so like he starts reviewing her stuff and obviously he liked it, but you know, he just gave her some tips and like you know, just taught her some stuff, blew my mind, you know, over teaching her like color theory in a few minutes. It's actually how I learned color theory. It was like in 10 minutes from Brian Stelfreeze. And so it was just this crazy thing. And, you know, he gave her a bunch of good advice. And so off she went. And then there was this other guy who was in front of me because I was third in line. And he opens his portfolio, and I don't remember what this guy's name is. I should just try to find this guy somewhere or something. I'd recognize the page if I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
But like he had these portfolio pages where he opened up and it's this whole fight scene of Captain America on like the Q train, just like going through like, you know, Long Island and stuff, like just fighting these terrorists on top of a train. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was like, oh my God, this is so ill. Like, what? I was so blown away. Like, I didn't like the guy's art was like super crisp and stuff, but like Brian dug into that guy for a lot of the reasons we were just speaking about, for like basically just drawing everything, you know, from like an artist standpoint. I was like, wow, this guy's like crazy. He drew every little brick, he drew like every little, you know, little tiny thing and every little detail, you know what I mean? Like you could see the dirt underneath like Captain America's fingernails and everything, you know? And so it was intense and awesome, but only awesome for me as an artist, you know, like because Brian was right in that I couldn't remember, other than that they were on top of a train, what the point was of what happened, you know, and I can't quite remember any, you know, yeah, I just can't remember anything about it other than
Right.
that, you know. So he was right, and that was like that was appealing to artists, but that is a turn off for readers because it's just too much information for your brain to hold on to, you know, from panel to panel to panel. And so he got into him about like just a lot of storytelling stuff. And then so it was my turn, and you know, gave him the portfolio, and he was just kind of like, he was like, all right, before I open this up, like, you know, he's like, are you gonna piss me off here? Like, you know, whatever. And I was just like, probably, you know, it's like probably. And in the portfolio, like I said, I had two samples. I had one original story that I had come up with, drawn in like a Jim Lee / Ryan Otley, Corey Walker style, you know, and then like another sample that was a Batman story off of like a Chuck Dixon script I had found online. That was like a mix between the Tim Sale or the yeah, like Tim Sale meets like Mike Mignola, like sort of thing, you know. And I sort of showed him those and he started looking through them. And you know, he was just kind of nodding his head and like scratching. He's like, okay. I see some stuff you're doing here that's awesome, and then I also see some stuff you're doing here that's like really pissing me off. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, no, man, it's cool. We're gonna talk about the stuff. And then he went into sort of like breaking down a lot of the fundamental stuff that I was off, you know, like and things that I could do to fix those. And he gave me this one exercise to do, and he was just like, hey, do this like 400 times. Basically, there's these gesture drawings and and it'll fix this problem. And he also ended up asking me in that conversation, just like, hey, you know, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing out here? And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to college, and all that stuff. And, he was like, well, before I even told him that, he was like, you should come out to Atlanta. I live in Atlanta. Well, he asked me where I was from. And I was like, oh, well, I just moved here from Tallahassee, Florida. And he was like, oh, well, I teach in Atlanta. You should come up to Atlanta. I was like, oh, I just moved up here for college. So I'm kind of stuck here. He's like, oh, okay, well, if that, he's like, it's cool. Here's my email address. Like, let's keep in contact. Like, I want to help you, like, get better or whatever. And I went to the hotel room that night. That was on a Saturday. That Sunday, I like woke up. That night, and then I started practicing the stuff that Brian told me about, and I started digesting everything that he had talked about, like, and going over my pages that I had like shown him, and like really thinking about what he had told me. And I started to get like really pissed off because I was like, motherfucker is right. I was like, God, I was like so mad. I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. How can I mess that up? How come I didn't know that this was my problem? Like, oh, it's so blatant that like I messed this, and this up. And then I started doing the thing he told me that night, and I realized that it would just like that it was instantaneously going to fix the problems that I had. And I was like, oh man, awesome. Because like I could tell 100 gesture drawings later, I was already like looser and less caring about what I was doing. I was too uptight about everything I was drawing, so everything like was just like super reworked and like hardcore, just like I just kept like redrawing stuff to the point where it just like was really stiff and everything. So I needed to like loosen up and not care so much about like the artwork that I was putting down. And that helped me a lot with that, even that night. And then so that next morning I went to go see him, and just to be like, yo, thank you so much for that advice. That really helped.
Mm.
And when I stopped by, he was just like, to say that, he was just like, oh yeah, dude, no problem. He's like, I'll be painting a little later today if you want to come by the booth.
Mm.
And I was like, just to ask me any questions you want or whatever. And I was like, fuck yeah, of course I would like that. So I went about my day, got a couple more reviews, and then came back to the table. When I came back and he was painting, like there was sort of like a pretty decent sized crowd. And I don't know if you've seen Brian at a convention.
Oh yeah, yeah. I saw him at the Baltimore Comic Con 2 years ago.
Yeah. So he gets a pretty big crowd going when he starts painting, because
Mm-hmm.
people see that as magic. So there was like a decent sized crowd there, and I just kind of saw it, and I just poked around and was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm not gonna like mess with the man like while he's getting his dough. I was like, let me just let him do his thing.
For sure.
And I started like walking away, and then like I hear through the crowd, like I'm just like hear Hoyt, 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 and I like turn around, and it's like here's Brian, like like he's like, hey man, hey dude, like I'm doing this thing, like come on dude, like come on back here. And so he like took me behind the table and just sat with me there, and let me ask questions about what he was doing. He was just basically like, since you won't be able to come to Atlanta,
Right.
let me help you with whatever I can right now.
We're gonna boot
And
camp
so,
right this second.
right this second, like just ask away whatever you want. And so we just like spend a couple hours me just sitting there like picking his brain over like every move he was making, like, oh well, why'd you do that, and why'd you do this, and oh, why are you thinking of this, and why is that, like, why did you do that right there, kind of thing.
Kudos to him, because I don't think I could work like that.
yeah, absolutely. And I was probably just annoying as fuck.
Exactly.
Let's not lie.
For sure.
So I was like all up on it, and he taught me so much, man. And I was just like ecstatic at that point, and he just gave me his email address and his phone number, and he was just like, hey man, like if you need any help with anything or whatever, you have any questions, just like hit me up. I got you, like whatever. And I was like, because we just, I guess, really hit it off at that point. And so I went home that night. It was like a long ass drive from San Francisco to San Diego. I get home. My dad is like up. This is like 3 in the morning, right? Like 3, 4 in the morning. I get home. My dad is up, and he is up prepared with like the whole, if you're gonna do comics, you can't live in this house, like speech. Like, hey, if you're gonna do this, like you can't, like if you're gonna live here, you need to be like a lawyer, business, doctor, like whatever. You can't do comic books. And so like, and I didn't even get a chance to tell him of this like amazing experience that I had just had, like meeting an idol of mine that like, basically was just like, hey man, I'll teach you, like I'll help you,
Right.
And I didn't even get a chance to like say that to him. We kind of got into like this huge fight, and the next morning I sort of sold everything I could sell in my garage, my TV, my PlayStation, like everything, to get a U-Haul, packed it up, and moved back to Tallahassee that day. Like that, it was the Sunday. I moved that Monday, like
Mm-hmm.
literally, um, all the way back to Tallahassee in order to, just live with my mom's. Because at that point, I was like, well, I got nowhere to go, so I got to go home to my mom's
For
crib.
sure.
I know nobody else in California, kind of thing. So I packed up my little Civic, got a little U-Haul trailer, drove it across the country, made it home. And on that trip, I like ended up emailing Brian and being like, hey man, like funny story about that whole like coming to Atlanta and hanging out with you thing. Can I still do that kind of thing? And he basically got back to me. He was like, yeah, man, of course. Like if you would like to, like it's gonna be a little difficult from where you live. And I was like, oh no, man, actually I'm moving back to Tallahassee like right now.
Yeah.
And so
I'm
he was
currently at a
just like,
McDonald's
okay,
using their
yeah.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah. And he was just like, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem, dude. Like we'll set something up once you get settled. And then what I started to do, like literally right after that, like the week I got back, I started to travel between Atlanta to Tallahassee once a week, just to drive back and forth. It's like a 5-hour drive
Mm-hmm.
there, and then a 5-hour drive back. But like just to learn from Brian, he was teaching a figure drawing class at the time up here, and so I'd come up early in the day, hang out with him at the studio. um, he'd give me a bunch of assignments and stuff to work on. I would then take those assignments home after I drove home and just like work them as much as possible. And to mention like that assignment that he gave me that he told me to do 400 of, I basically, before the first time I met up with him again, I did it 1,500 times.
Mm.
I was like,
Yeah.
this is like helping me. I need to keep doing this. Once I got to like 100, 200, 300, 400 times, I was like, oh my God, this is like giving me everything that I wanted. I need to keep doing it more. And
Right.
so I did. And I came back with that.
And those
And
are
then
just
we got
gesture
to
drawings?
yeah, just gesture drawings, just
Yep.
quick like little gesture drawings. The key of it was that actually like I would do them on little tiny cue cards, little tiny index cards,
Right.
and crumple them up and throw them away. Every single one of them. Like just do it really quick, 20, 30 seconds, get down what I can get down, crumple it up and throw it away. What that does is it actually changes your subconscious connection to what it is that you're creating. Because it'll eventually at some point, and that point is different for everybody. Sometimes a couple of drawings, sometimes it's hundreds of drawings, sometimes thousands of drawings. At some point, your brain clicks over to being like, what I did just doesn't matter.
Right.
I
This
can
isn't
get it right the
precious.
next time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not precious at all. I can get it right next time, or I can try again next time, kind of thing. And so once that clicks over, I think that unlocks a lot for any artist that's trying to like do comics, because like we're not drawing just one panel. We draw
Mm-hmm.
thousands of panels,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands of panels
Mm-hmm.
to like tell a story. So it's like you can't be too precious over one panel, because there isn't really a comic out there that anybody says that the comic is based off of this one panel. Any one panel is only as good as all of the panels preceding it and all of the panels following it. It's like it's the collection of all of them is the work, you know. So that preciousness of like one of every single one of them having to be perfect, I think holds up a lot of people and ends up spending a lot of time. And for me was less rewarding because people weren't spending the time and realizing the time that I had spent on it anyway. Like I get
Right.
the same reaction out of a layout that I do out of like a finished drawing when I show somebody, right? Like it's if I show somebody a layout of a page, they'll be like, oh man, this is really cool. All this awesome stuff happening. Like, cool, this is great. And then when I show them the finished page, they're like, oh yeah, that's that thing I saw
Mm-hmm.
finished. It's
Mm-hmm.
not really as like
Yeah, their head didn't explode once the page was
yeah,
finished.
right,
Yeah.
right. So it's getting over sort of that situation, and that helped me a lot. So to bring that all around full circle, I did all of that week to week. He would give me an assignment. I would go home, drive home to Tallahassee. I was living with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Congrats to you too. Also being
Yeah, thank you.
engaged. Yeah, no problem. And so I would just basically like, the whole week in between doing freelance graphic design jobs, I would do the exercise as many times as possible and just like make sure that I crush it. Like if he told me to do 100 times, I would do it 300. If he told me to do 1,000 times, I would do 2,000. Like it didn't matter. Like I was just like wanting to do it and show him that I was like dedicated to doing it. And not only that, I just saw leaps and bounds of improvement in what I was doing by practicing my fundamentals like that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I think what Brian saw was like my thirst to want to be a storyteller, not my thirst to be a great artist. I was willing to sacrifice whatever art crap in order to be able to tell a story better. So after like about 6 months of me going up there every single week, like once a week, Brian was like, dude, you're up here a lot. Like, he was like, you should just like rent this studio space next to me. And I was just like, absolutely. Like, the next week, I literally, like, my then girlfriend, now wife, her sister lived, about 30 minutes away from where the studio was. And I was just like, hey, can I live with you, rent out your bonus room for a little bit until, things get settled and whatever. And so I moved up here quickly, and I was in the studio, and I've been working in comics like even like ever since then, pretty much ever since I met Brian Stelfreeze, I've been working in comics because he unlocked that key for me that was like, hey, you're trying to be a storyteller, not an artist. Like, you're trying to tell stories. So figure out what kinds of stories you like to tell, and then figure out what tools you need to tell those stories properly. Once that like clicked for me, then the art didn't matter anymore. Now it was like, okay, awesome. I like these kinds of stories. I like to tell these kinds of things. Or if I come across a type of story that I want to tell, then I start to look into like, well, what tools do I need to tell that story best? And it becomes a why question and not a how question, like what we were talking about earlier as well,
Right.
where people get wrapped up in like all their little details. That's like getting wrapped up in the how and not asking yourself, well, why am I even doing this? Am I doing this to like, basically show up on the scene and be like, hey, check out how awesome my art dick is, or am I doing this to tell a goddamn story?
Right.
Like, I think that's like the key thing for me that I need to realize is like, I need to not show off sometimes, because if I show off, that detracts from the story moment that we're trying to tell here. So all of that was like key, and I don't mean to go on about all that or whatever,
No,
but
no,
that was all key in my making to get me to where I am today.
Right.
And then from that point, it was just like basically doing the work. So like taking one job and flipping that into the next job and using that job as the portfolio to the next job and so on and so forth, like as much as possible, right? Like every job I got, I made sure that I used that job to get more work. I think the leg up I had on that was because I was already doing freelance graphic design work before, so I understood like what it was like to like get a client and then try to do well for that client and then flip that client as an example to other clients, like, so I think that was like a business thing that I had already sort of thought of.
Yeah, once you've done a certain amount of pitches, it just becomes, another day.
Yeah, exactly. And you gotta, and like we were talking about the baby stuff earlier, if every project idea and every pitch that I had was a baby of mine, I would be so literally depressed because I get turned down so much. Like people just saying like, "Hey, no, we're not going to do that. No, I don't like that.
That baby's
no,
ugly."
Can we do this instead? Yeah, exactly. You have to be able to be like, okay, yeah, baby's a little ugly. Sure.
Yeah,
okay, see you. Next.
fuck that baby.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's honestly, like, I think like if you get too attached to it, you become a little too immobile to succeed in such a rapidly moving industry. Because things change like so fast, and we are at a huge disadvantage already because it takes time to do what we do.
Yeah. Even once the project's done. Well, like once the book is done and it's lettered and colored, it's ready to go, you still have an additional 14 weeks,
right,
or more sometimes.
Right, or more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, dude, you finish a book sometimes, depending on who you're involved with, that book doesn't come out until like a year after you finished it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it could be longer, like it just depends. I mean, like you fall into publishing schedules. There's a whole other world involved in that has nothing to do with whether you're good at drawing or not,
Yeah.
or whether you can tell a story or not. That's a whole other side of this. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know, I lost my train of thought there, but
yeah, your pages can be, that Jim Lee or Scott Williams, they can be that level. It doesn't change all the other variables, printing times, and when people are off work. And I was just looking. I'm starting the creator-owned, collective that I've got going on here. We have the podcast and the website, and we post things for artists, and writers so that they can learn and do things like that. We're getting ready to do collectibles. We're getting ready to get into the statue business and stuff like that. Okay. And just a single statue, once the money's paid and production has started, is almost 48 weeks. until
Yeah, yeah.
until we until we even get to lay hands on a statue.
Oof, yeah, because it's got to go. What you got to go through? You got to go through the molding process, well, the design process first,
Yep.
right, and then the molding process for it, and then you got to make sure like that those, yeah, dude, and then the
and
painting and
and
all
then
that.
there's even there's safety measures and drop testing and
And not to mention shipping in between all of those things too for materials and all that as
yeah
well.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah freight time and cost is like something that you don't ever think about. It's like when if you have an order for 2,500 statues, shipping 2,500 statues from Canada to here or Singapore to here, I mean, like
yeah,
that
yeah,
alone, it take my grandmother will mail me a letter. It takes me 2 weeks to get it, and now
yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's shipping a semi load of statues. It's gonna take me a
And where are you gonna
month.
put those pallets? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that's like 2,500 statues, depending on the size of the statue. That might be not one pallet, but
Yeah, might be
multiple
90.
pallets of like
Yeah.
stuff. And it's like, where are you gonna stick that? No, I'm with you, man. I think a lot of like print on demand stuff has helped with some of that right there. But like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like it's still not what it needs to equal the pace at which like information moves. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
just I have a lot of conversations with writers about when I first start working on projects, just to say, hey man, like that thing that you wrote might have taken you 5 minutes to write, but
Hmm.
that's gonna take me like 5 days to draw, man. Like
Yep.
so, like you have to like the bottleneck that we have is like literally our time, our speed, our talent, our skill, our efficiency. So that's where I try to like improve as much as I can, because that's where I have the control. Beyond that, that's like a whole
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate that my first big project is my thesis. And so, whenever when I'm we finished the story, my best friend and I wrote it, and essentially we did it like this is the first stage, the first writing that we did was a co-op. We wrote it together. And then he had to do his doctoral dissertation, and so he was like, "Okay, the first rewrite, you get to do whatever you want." And so I just get to go through and, we didn't really have he's a physicist. He has no experience doing artwork and stuff like that, so anything. And I was like, I think that might just be a little too insane to draw. Like I just like, let's take that out, or let's minimize this. Maybe the dragon's not 50 stories tall, you know what I mean? Like maybe
Right.
he's a little smaller.
Maybe we don't have a dozen dragons. Maybe we
Yeah.
have one. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
100% with you. It's that budget of time too. At that point, like although people try to say that like, oh, you can make a comic book that's like has no budget. It's like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
The true
in
time,
theory.
yeah, in theory,
In
yes,
theory.
but the only budget constraint is time.
Mhm.
Like
and
how much time.
and people don't understand. It's like it's time and money, because there's always that quote, like time is money. Like the amount of time that you're spending on, i've got I've got 4 pages on my table right now. Those 4 pages kept me from doing, like, somebody came to me about doing some computer repair stuff, and I was like, I could really use $175 right now, but
Yeah,
I gotta get these pages done. So it's
right.
like,
Opportunity cost.
those 3 pages, on Wednesday or whatever yesterday, that cost me, almost $200. You know what I mean?
Right,
But it's like,
right.
you have to make those choices. I
Those are
quit
the
my
priority. Yeah,
I quit my day job because this is more important to me. But
yeah.
that puts stressors on, like, your wife or my fiance. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a community effort between the writer and the colorist and the letterer and the artist, but it's also a community effort, like, with their family as well. They
Yeah,
had to,
absolutely, absolutely. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the support of my wife. At least even
amen.
her having my back at the end of the day
Hmm.
to say like, yo, do it. Like,
For
let's go,
sure.
fuck it. Like at that point, just that, like someone willing to back me up when I roll the dice on a story idea that might not work. Like that might not go. Like just because it's what I'm passionate about. So having that team around you is extremely important. And I think that like the other thing that anybody coming up right now should also be aware of is that there is no shame in paying the bills. So like
Mm.
any retainer job, like you said, the computer repair thing or anything like that, like there's no shame in having like what we refer to in the studio as a retainer job, which is just a job that you do that keeps the bills paid and keeps the lights on. Like
Right.
that whether that job is working at McDonald's or, like computer repair or whatever it is for you that you do, that you get some extra cash that lets you continue to do the thing that you're passionate about, there's no shame in that at all.
Right.
Like, so I also want, because I meet a lot of artists that get super depressed because they're like, oh man, I'm doing all this stuff, but like I'm working this job over here at this place or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, but they need to work that job to keep the lights on. So it's like they allow that to drain them, when in actuality, I think, like, if ever I had to do that in the past, even doing like I said, like design work or logo design or whatever it is that I've done, coloring work or whatever that isn't like drawing comics, it's all like to keep the lights on, and I treat it as such, so it's like I'm not ashamed or afraid to like do that kind of work. And I
Right.
think that other people shouldn't be either.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people get that stigma of like, if I'm not doing comics for all of my money, then I might as well not even be like doing it or something, or there's some kind of
For
shame
sure.
in that, and there isn't at all. Honestly, I think the easiest way to go about this career, the easiest way, is to get a degree and get a job doing something else, and then do this on like nights and weekends for the rest of your life.
For sure.
And you won't worry about the cash payout, you won't worry about money, you'll have all your bills paid, and you could do all the crazy wild storytelling that you want.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think
A lot of people, when I talk to, like, I get mentored by Ben Harvey, who's a
Mhm.
friend of Brian Stelfreeze, and
Yeah, Ben Harvey's dope, dude. His
yeah.
art's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been my senpai for the past year, and I owe a lot to him. But like we've had this conversation where he's asked me, like, why are you in school? Why are you in your master's? Why are you getting your doctorate? And
Mhm.
and my best friend Phil, who is my co-writer, we've had this grand scheme for like the past 5 years that we're going to go through the entire school system. We're going to play their game, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get comfy teaching jobs, and then we're going to write comic books for the rest of our lives. And
There you go.
because
Yeah.
I will be tenured, they can't touch me, and I can do
Right.
whatever I want.
Dude,
I,
smart. Yeah. Smart idea.
I'm playing the game so that I have a salary, and I will just teach I'll just teach a figure drawing class, and I'll just so happen to be doing panels at the same time. You know what I mean? It's
Right. And
just
I mean, and at the same time too, dude, that leaves the opportunity open that if comics ever becomes that income for you, where you don't need to do the teaching thing anymore,
Mhm.
you can make that switch comfortably, with a safety net,
For
without
sure.
worrying about that stuff. So there is no like shame in that. Everybody doesn't have to like do what I did, which is put it all on the line and
Yeah.
like roll the dice kind of
You
thing.
don't
That's
have
not
to
the
be the
room for
starving
it.
artist, but
Yeah.
sometimes it just ends
So
up like that. I
right,
mean,
right,
you have to
absolutely.
know the audibles. You have to know the playbook. You have to know like what you're doing. And I
Yeah.
think people misconstrued the amount of hours that it takes. It takes a ton of hours, but it doesn't have to be in the same day.
Right.
It's a
This is very
it's a
correct. This is super
it's a
correct.
slow burn. A lot of people
Mhm.
misconstrued that. I've had friends. I worked at Best Buy for almost 10 years, and I had friends who were artists, and I would constantly try to get them to go to bars and just draw with me. Just like, you're gonna go out to drink anyways. So how about, instead of getting blackout drunk, we just draw on some napkins and stuff, and just have a few beers, and then you're done. That
Mhm.
alone, that 2 hours socially drinking and drawing, is better than not doing it at all. And then
Absolutely.
maybe that's the thing that like piques their interest, and they continue to draw like two
Mhm.
hours 2 hours to 4 hours a day, or an hour a day, 15 minutes, like whatever you can
Yeah.
squeeze out, you
Yeah.
have to
It's
do.
I think you're tapping on something else too that I talked to a lot of people about, especially when I was like streaming stuff, because people don't want to be, for whatever reason, there's like some kind of shame in comics of being a hobbyist, because I
Mm,
think there's certain people that like, they don't want to do comics full time, they don't want to do comics for a living, they just want to do a comic book, or
right,
they want
right.
to do a comic strip, or they want to do like a short story, or they want to do whatever, and that's totally okay. Like there's no shame in like being a hobbyist and like working on your comic book for like 15 minutes a day, or like you shouldn't be down on yourself because you didn't get to work on it for 8 hours in a day or 10 hours in a day like I did. But that's because that's my job, like that's how I make my living, so I can spend all that time on it, and that's what I want to do with that time. If you don't want to do that all the time, there's no shame in it,
Right.
like you can totally do it on night, like I said, like on nights and weekends, and like you said, like 15 minutes here, 2 hours here, 4 hours, whatever you want. that you want to set aside for that, that's okay.
Yeah, it's weird that it's condemnable to be a hobbyist, cartoonist or comic book
Yeah,
artist, but not
it's
a
weird.
not a fine artist. You know, what I mean? If you go out and do
Right.
plein air painting, but you're not a professional fine artist, why is that not condemnable?
Dude,
But comic books are.
people play in like amateur
Yeah,
pickup
but
sports leagues
I,
of
I
all
I
sports
have a
all
friend
times,
who
and they don't,
plays
like
amateur
nobody says
dodgeball,
that.
and it's like, you're
Dude,
never gonna go
yeah,
pro,
it's like
and you're never gonna be a professional
right,
dodgeball player.
right,
But
right.
but drawing comics or or drawing manga
Yeah,
is somehow
you can
the
only do it if you want to go pro one day. Yeah,
exactly.
it's silly. Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about a lot of like art growth, things like that. Like, how are you currently battling like having your art growth stunted? I mean, we plateau as artists, frequently.
Mm-mm.
How are you dealing with that?
Yeah. So my number one thing to try to avoid that off the bat is like to stay out of my comfort zone. So I
Mm,
constantly like try to like I like to say that I'm comfortable when I'm uncomfortable. So like I try to like find the next project that's gonna push me into in a direction that I'm not doing already. So like and if I think if you look back on like the work that I've done before, you'll see that like from project to project, like the style can vary like pretty wildly, and that's because like I like to, like I said, try to stay out of that comfort zone and then try to adapt myself to what I think is best for the story, not necessarily what I think is best for me as an artist. And so that like staying out of my comfort zone helps me not plateau because I'm always trying to learn new things or trying to learn how to do something differently that I wasn't doing before. And then if I do plateau and I realize that I have, because it does happen,
mm-hmm.
all the time,
Yeah.
I go back to my fundamentals. I go back to my gesture drawings. I go back to doing, compositional studies of, film noir. I go back to sort of doing like color comp studies and beat charts and all kinds of stuff of like other things to like a fundamental storytelling stuff, to improve because I find like every time I can go back to that well and tweak the fundamentals and improve on that, when I go back to doing whatever it is that I was doing before that, I'll have a better understanding of where I was misstepping and where I was like having the problem,
Right.
So
Yeah. Get a
that's
bigger macro picture of it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, 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 yeah. Always the bigger picture. I think that's how I function in general for my entire process is like general to specific.
Mm-hmm.
So like when working in on a comic book page, it's like the first thing that I do after I read the script a few times is I'll just do the paneling. I'll like just take on the side like a sheet of paper and just do like little rectangles, pages, and I'll just like small make little panels based on what I think
Mm-hmm.
is the panel fitting for that beat. And I'm essentially thinking of like the drum line, like the music, the bass line of it. And those are like my beats and how they're gonna like pace everything. And then once that's done, then I consider what the layouts are gonna be within those beat charts, and then within that where the detail is going to go based on what the focal point is. And like so yeah, it's just always from like the macro to the micro as much as possible, because I feel like the more I can handle on that macro scale, the less I have to worry about when I get to the micro scale,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So um yeah, always the big picture stuff for me. And the more I can get out to the big picture, the more I can figure out where I've misstepped on something.
That makes sense.
So
So the we talked a little bit about social media presence and how that kind of affects things. How has the attention from Yumi and Last Stop, how has that affected your social media, and has the attention affected your art now?
Dude, I mean, it's always a positive, man. I think the more eyes you can get on what you're doing, what you've done, the more people like that you can have to respond, the more support you'll get as you keep going forward and keep doing more stuff. So like the result has definitely been positive, right? Like the crazy thing about Last Stop, it has to be like probably the most read thing that I've ever done, because like
Mm.
we ran it as a webtoon first and we had like 150,000 people like read it.
Oh
So
wow,
that's like, yeah, it's a lot of people.
that's a lot of people.
It's like a lot of people. So um that obviously like opened it up to where, before convention shut down, as I was even doing the webtoon, um, I would go to a convention, set up and pull up the banner, and people would just be like, "Oh man, you do Last Stop? That's crazy. I've read this before." Um, So that was one thing. You know, yeah, people just like recognize you more. From the Yumi thing, it's a little, I don't know how much that's gonna affect it just because of the whole COVID thing. I'm locked in my house, right? Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
get to like go to a convention and see like people just pop and go, "Hey, I heard you," whatever. But obviously, my
Right.
social media presence like definitely grows with every project. You know, I think we're sharing, getting the word out there. People are seeing it and responding, and they find out that I exist and they might like my stuff. So it's always positive. Like it lays the groundwork for me to be able to do more in the future. The more support that I have.
Right.
So, one of the things I'm learning now, though, about the Kickstarter thing is that it's crazy how big the Kickstarter community itself has gotten at
Yeah.
this point.
It's its
Even
own
from
little
like,
microcosm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
even from when we did last stop to now me doing Yumi with Doug, it's like I didn't realize that much had changed over the past like year or so
Mm.
in between those two campaigns, and it's just like crazy how much that has. It's awesome. It's a positive, I think, because it gives a solid outlet for independent creators to find a supportive crowd to help them out. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's Kickstarter currently for me is like my favorite place to search for new like sketchbook releases
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
for people that I would have never noticed, because even like there's some publishers who are now kind of testing the waters, like if they're going to do like a, I don't even know what they call them, like a revival sketchbook of like an artist who's passed away from a long time ago, like
Sure,
like a classical artist. They'll
yeah,
do they'll do a compendium of their work, and a lot of
right,
times you may never even have heard of this artist or know who it is, but there's a few publishers out there who have been like real key for like showing me some like insane painters where I'm like, how have I
awesome.
never heard of this person?
Oh,
And I feel like you can do the same thing with comics, and like Trey was talking about like the web comics, like I've looked on there and it's like I've seen like Instagram posts of web comics, but never really knew that it was its own platform. And
right,
I feel like
no,
5 years
it's
ago
huge.
it really wasn't its own thing,
Mm-hmm,
and now it's just
mm-hmm.
it had that pop. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so I feel like
yeah,
Kickstarter, it's just had that pop. I mean, Boom Studios, I mean, they're an enormous company, and they still
yeah.
use Kickstarter to fund projects that they don't necessarily want to like push the money out for up front.
Right, right. Well, it helps when you got Keanu Reeves too. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
that's
mean, they had done some
yeah,
other
yeah,
ones
no doubt.
before that, but
No, no
yeah.
doubt, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. No, no, no. Boom puts out awesome stuff. Like
Oh yeah.
there's no doubt about that. Um, yeah, no, I think that's really opened up, the market for that, and like things like that, have brought a bunch of new users to the platform, which is good for the platform. So, I
Yeah.
got no complaints about anybody doing anything like that. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I think it's a whole brave new world, and things are gonna keep changing.
Hmm.
Like because COVID's here, and it's hanging out for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, things are gonna keep adapting and changing to function in this world that we live in now. So, the new normal is gonna be interesting. Even when
Mm.
things open back up and we figure this thing out, you know, whenever that happens, it'll still be different than it was before. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The new norm for conventions is the only thing that's really up in the air for me. I know like
mhm.
my local comic book store has done like a killer job with the like maintaining within reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they never
Mhm.
closed per
Right.
se,
Right. Right.
because the guy was just doing mad hold orders. It was like
Right.
you could still buy
Good for you.
comics, you just can't pick them up
Can't get them
until
up right now. Yeah, that's good
exactly.
though. I'm glad that the people supported him to
Oh
stay
my
up
gosh,
too.
man,
So
he had long boxes out the ass. I mean, like
that's dope.
the first day that he opened, I would think was probably better business than the first day he originally opened.
Right. Right. Then his grand opening. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's great, man. That's awesome. I mean, comics is booming in that direction too, and all that, and that's really good. Like
yeah,
honestly, like, uh, yeah, it's tough.
yeah.
COVID has been wild, dude.
It
It's
has.
definitely changed the game. For better or worse, it's definitely changed the
Yeah,
game. So
I will say that I got better
yeah.
as an artist because of it for sure.
That's good. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think yeah, we all stayed inside, right?
yeah,
Hopefully
yeah.
everybody got better. Yeah, for sure. I think I got better as well.
So with the Kickstarter, since we're on that roll, like what's I guess give me give me a tip that you found either surprising or interesting within like the last couple fully funded projects that you've done that you didn't necessarily realize was a thing. just like for people who are
The
interested.
Kickstarter thing.
Yeah, with Kickstarter. So like, you
So
know, with like with me or anybody who's never done one, I've never even attempted to start one. I don't know what they
yeah,
look like on the inside. Like, give me some
sure,
information.
sure. So I think like one of the most fascinating things that I've found out over doing the Kickstarters that I've done is that it's not necessarily a platform where you want to like sell something, although a lot of people use it for that. It's a platform for you wanting to make something.
Right.
So if you're looking for support on the platform, the best way to go about it is to make sure that like the people who are supporting you feel like they are supporting you and helping something come to life versus just buying something like off of a shelf kind of thing.
Mm,
Like let them know like the struggles and the hardships that you've had to make this thing, because that's part of it, because they're coming in as a backer, they're coming in as a supporter for what it is that you're trying to build, not necessarily like a customer. If that's, obviously
right.
there's money involved in all of that, and they're getting a product from you, so they do need to be treated like with the respect of a customer, but like definitely you need to give them a little bit more because they're like coming in on the ground up. It's that realization of like you don't need to sell 20,000 copies in stores if you can have like 300 people hook you up from the ground up with no middleman.
Mm,
So I think like it's that you got to share that experience with people, that like you're doing something special and you're making something happen that you want to happen, and they are helping you do that.
wow. Okay.
That's like where I think like a lot of that comes from. And I think you'll see a lot of that support. Like I think I found out over the years that there are definitely some of my core supporters who really don't even care about comics per se.
Mm,
They just like me working hard.
mm-hmm.
Like they can see that I'm working hard and that I'm working towards something that I'm really passionate about, and so they choose to like support that. And that's like more than I can ever ask for on anything. And I think that that's like something to know about a Kickstarter too, is that those people coming there to support you, they're getting in on the ground level. Like you're not like some, and I say this as one of those guys, like, you're not some like hot shot dude that everybody already knows about, that, you're just going to explode. And you might as well have just like sold those on your own website anyway, because, you already have the attention. I think like Kickstarter comes into play to help you find people who are going to support you and help you build whatever it is you're trying to build from the ground up, whatever that is,
Right.
invention, comic book, video game, whatever.
Right.
I think it's important to have that. So it's part of that experience, and I think it's part of the experience that I enjoy as well, because then you get the direct feedback and the direct conversation with the people that are going to be getting the product that you put together.
Mm-hmm.
Which is different than like traditional publishing, where um, in traditional publishing, I make the book, publisher gets it, the publisher sends it to the retailer sends it, sells it to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and I never know whether that person liked it, hated it, whatever. I don't know what that reaction was to the product. So
Right.
Kickstarter gives you that opportunity to have that face-to-face time, I guess, that direct contact, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has a lot of lines that cross with like Twitch streaming or
Yeah,
running,
absolutely.
running anything where you are the entertainment, you're the personality, you are,
Mm-hmm.
everything that encompasses this idea. They only know about the book because of you. They don't know about the book because they were on a marketplace and they saw it for sale,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. I think that gets lost. That you have my wheels turning, because as I've been doing an immense amount of research for these collectibles, it's
Mm-hmm.
going, just a rough number for, like, let's say 250 statues is somewhere around $90,000. And so when you think about that, I mean,
Hefty bill, yeah.
if I went to all of my family members, I have to think about it the same way. It's like, this is something that I believe in. You have to treat
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter in the same fashion.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
but I think like initially my thought was like so fixated on the number that it's like you have to think about it as like I did sales. I did millions and millions of dollars of sales for Microsoft and Best Buy, and so like
Mm-hmm.
I flip into that mindset. That's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
business switch gets flipped, but really you need to stay in that more humble. mid ground of like, yes, this, it does take a lot of money, but it's
it's a
about the
balance of both,
people.
man. It's a balance of both, because I think you need to approach it like with the mindset that it is a business, and you need to come out at the end of it on top, and that's how you're going to decide your number. But I think like how you're going to get people involved is if they're actually invested. Whether they're invested in you, the product, the story, the whatever it is, there's got to be some method to get somebody invested into it, because it is, like you said, it's not just a shelf that people are buying stuff off of. You kind of have to push them there. So yeah, I think it's a little of both. You definitely want to make sure you got all those numbers straight, because you don't want to come out of this worse off. You don't want this to hurt you, obviously. Like, people are doing this to help you. So in the end, if it ends up hurting you, it's like, why did you do this in the first place? Kind of thing.
If you have to take a loan out to finish your Kickstarter, you probably shouldn't do that.
It becomes a little tough, right? And yeah, it's all deciding about like what that is for you, what you need for it, how much it's going to cover. I mean, that there's a whole deep level of like,
it's a science, and it's a science in itself, for sure.
Yeah.
So I've got some rapid fire questions.
All right, hit me.
And then and this is where like there's always like the explosion and the helicopter flies through.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you watch the video, you'll see all that. Exactly. So all right, so I've got 4 rapid fire questions, and then we're gonna end this out, and we're gonna let everybody know where they can find you and all that jazz. So first one, age old question: pizza rolls, pizza bagels.
Pizza bagels.
Pizza bagel? You're a pizza bagels kind of guy?
Pizza bagel guy, dude. Yeah. Pizza rolls are good. Tostino pizza rolls are good, but classic, when pizza is on a bagel, you can have pizza anytime. That was I grew up on that. So,
the slogan got you. The slogan got you.
It got me, bro.
I just could never get the pizza bagels to cook all the way through. It was always like lava on the outside, and then a small frozen ball of dough in the middle.
It's been like a decade since I've had bagel bites, man. I would like to try some in my new air fryer. I got an air fryer now.
Yeah.
That would make some fire bagel bites, actually. So I'll have to try that.
I'm a pizza roll guy, but an air fryer. I have one over there, and there's not much you can't cook in it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it might solve that like frozen core problem.
Yeah. I wonder if it would improve Hot Pocket.
Oof. Maybe you got to wrap it in some aluminum foil first or something.
Yeah.
Depends on what kind of air fryer you have too. Don't just go doing that.
Yeah.
Putting aluminum in your air fryer.
Yeah. So next one, if you could master one non-art skill in a day, what would it be?
Skateboarding.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I used to skate. Yeah, I used to skate as a kid, but it wasn't anything that I dedicated myself to like that.
For sure.
Okay, I could do some tricks. I went when I was like 20. I got to go on a trip to Spain and ended up skating in Spain, which is a lot of fun. But like I never got like really, really good.
Right.
That's something I never put in the practice time to become an amazing skater, and that's something I wish I just had powers of. Like if I could just.
For sure, yeah. Just be hitting like tray flips downstairs and.
Oh, dude, everything.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Everything, just like the world would be my skateboard.
We're running around like Rodney Mullen, just. Yeah, if I could just infinitely steal, oh, man, there's so many good skaters. I mean, like
any one of them, dude.
Yeah, I think if
Campbell was my favorite when I was young.
If I only had to pick one, I think it would just make it impossible, because I think it would just be too many.
Yeah.
Too many good people. This is another question. I don't even quite know the answer to this. Is cereal soup?
Is cereal soup? Fuck. I would say no, because my qualifier for soup right now is randomly made up, and it's going to be that it gets put together before it goes into your bowl. Like, soup is made in the pot. Cereal is like put together in your bowl. You don't like put the milk and the cereal in a pot and then put the cereal into a bowl. You mix that in the bowl directly.
And
then the soup is like all in one either make the soup in a pot and then it goes into a bowl, or you
Okay.
heat the can up and then that goes into a bowl. Like it's already like
Mm.
together before it hits the bowl. That's my made up on the spot, on the fly qualifier for soup right there.
That's actually
Get
really
it?
that's
Yeah, get
really
it.
good. That's really good.
Get it.
We may have just solved like a huge problem on the internet.
that's
Um,
my that's my qualifier.
wow. Yeah, that makes sense because if it was in, I don't know, would you buy
That
it?
shit doesn't come pre-bagged. No,
Would you
you can't
would
buy
you
cereal
no
with milk
would
because
you?
it's soggy.
Yeah, would you
No.
buy it if like
So
Campbell's came out with like a somehow came out with like an invention where it was like in a cup and the top part was cereal and the bottom part was milk, and when you poured it, it
it poured
combined.
together. Right.
Yeah.
But it's still combining into the bowl though.
Hold on, I gotta cut the stream
It's
off.
still
That was a really good
separating
idea. Hold on. I'm gonna start selling boxes of cereal that are refrigerated with milk at the bottom, and when you
and
pour it, it's like
cereal on
it's
top.
it's the perfect
If you can patent
combination
it, I want 1%.
for sure.
Yeah.
So this was a fun one. I thought this was like the perfect one to end on. What is one secret conspiracy you would like to start?
Ooh, secret conspiracy that I'd like to start. Uh, maybe like I don't know, that I was like related to some awesome Western folk hero. That'd be dope.
You're like
That'd be
Wild
dope.
Earp's great lost cousin or
Yeah,
something.
like I'm Wild Bill Hickok's like grand, not at all possible because I'm South American, so that's never gonna happen. But totally related to the
No, no,
guy,
it was
like
it
whatever.
was.
So yeah, no, it would be cool. I mean, just because I guess I liked westerns a lot when I was growing up. So and some of those stories are like based on real figures, and I'm a huge fan of Deadwood. I don't know if you ever watched the Deadwood TV show.
No, I've heard of it. I definitely have heard of it.
Dude, amazing stuff.
Did
Amazing storyteller. Incredible stuff. Sucks they got canceled, and the movie
mm,
doesn't. It was like done 15 years after the show ended, but excellent. The first two seasons, dude. If you want to see good TV, go watch like Deadwood. And it is based on real, actual things that happen. After you watch the show, you should look up like what was real and what wasn't, and it's
mm-hmm,
gonna blow you away. The stuff that was like actually real that was in
mm.
that show. It's like really, really wild. Um, yeah. So
I
yeah. I like westerns, and it'd be cool to be
I grew up on Gunsmoke and Bonanza, so I can I can feel for you on that. My dad definitely didn't force me to watch that constantly.
yeah, I loved spaghetti westerns and all kinds of stuff when I
Oh
was a
yeah,
kid. Like
John Wayne, all that stuff.
John Wayne, and
My
really
favorite John
most of the
Wayne is
Clint Eastwood stuff.
when he throws him the wallet, like when he's like getting robbed and he throws him the wallet and shoots him with the other hand. It's just like I was like
I like
I don't think it's illegal to kill someone, but
right,
if I had
of course.
to kill somebody in a way, I think that would be
To defend
pretty
yourself.
hilarious. They're like,
Yeah.
give me your iPhone. I'm like, sure.
Yeah. It takes some skill, Like I think one of my favorite westerns is probably Unforgiven. I don't know if you've ever
Mm,
seen it with Clint Eastwood,
no.
Morgan Freeman, and Gene Hackman. It's really dope, man. It's like a unofficial sequel to like the Man with No Name like series
Mm,
stuff. It's not a true sequel or anything like that, but some of the stuff like nods to it and alludes to it or whatever, and it's a good bit of storytelling. It's a really cool story. And yeah, so yeah, westerns were huge. Me growing up, westerns, noir stuff. I grew up with brothers who are 18 and 22 years older than me. So
mm.
a lot of the stuff that I had when I was a kid was like hand me down stuff
Oh
that
yeah.
they had sort of left behind. So like, old stuff that was
Mm-hmm.
just there, and I gravitated towards a lot of that. So I owe a lot of my taste and influence, I think, to them and what they left sort of around from when they were younger, that I got influenced by as well. And one of those things was definitely westerns. So it was dope.
Yeah. I think the conspiracy that I would like to start, and I think it's true, but I think that they pick world leaders with underground fighting. Like when they pick a new, you know, a new president.
That's a bad call because I don't really think that you know, our ex could have actually like
No, that
won
was
any kind of like fight underground. So you're gonna have to like take
absolutely
that
not.
out of it.
No, so
But you know,
that was, I don't know if you ever watched like the Joe Rogan podcast or something like that, but they
yeah.
they talked about whether or not like what world leaders could fight Putin. And there's not, I don't think there's anyone out there in a fist fight that could beat Putin. He's an absolute monster.
Obama might have had a couple of might
Mm,
have gotten a couple licks in.
I don't know,
But
man.
other than
Putin's
that,
out there. He fight like he's
no,
been
that's what I'm saying. A couple licks in. Other than that,
he's been seen like
we don't got
punching
one.
bears and yeah, we're gonna need we need like Chuck Liddell to run for president or something.
Right. Well, good. Thank goodness it's not decided by that. Let's say that.
I don't know.
Because,
I think it is though. That's my conspiracy, bro.
Could be.
Conspiracy.
Could be.
But all right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna extend the same invitation that I extended to everybody. If you ever want to come back, just let me know, and we can definitely sit down and do this again. I'd like to get the whole crew. You, Doug, you know, let's try to work out something. Let's do like I always talk about like the drink and draw. I really want to get everybody together and just kind of hang out. We'll like do the big whiteboard program, and we'll just kind of like, you know, do some art and stuff like that.
Hit me up. Let me know when you want to organize that. We'll set it up.
For sure, but let everybody know where they can follow you and check you out. I'll have everything on the screen as well, but it's just for the audio people.
Yeah, my name is Hoyt Silva. You can find me on Twitter at Hoyt Silva, HOYTSILVA. Or you can find me on Instagram at the Hoyt, THEHOYT. And you can find me on Twitch under the same thing, the Hoyt. So
He will be streaming soon. We've heard confirmation.
After the 12th, I'll be back to streaming.
So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys again soon. Peace.